Thank you, Ed. Is this on? Can you hear me? My God, you guys get up early. Are you kidding me? I thought this was car guys. You guys, I thought, go out hard at night and you kind of stagger in the morning. You guys are all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I'm tired of watching Londoff on the video. How many times are you on there, Londoff? He's paying people off. He's my neighbor in St. Louis. I do Cardinal games. I do work at Fox. This will be my 8th All-Star game tonight. I did grow up as the son of a legendary announcer, Jack Buck, who was in St. Louis for almost 50 years and was in the Northeast before that. And I got a great education as a kid. They told me today that they wanted me to talk about what it means to be an All-Star, and I would be happy to do that, and I will do that from my perspective and what I think it means to be an All-Star. But I don't want to bore you. I don't want to talk for 30 minutes. I don't want to stomp around this stage and make you guys wish that I'd shut up and make you cry because you can't stand the sound of my voice. I've got tonight for that. And that's what McCarver's for, to be honest with you. But what I do want to do is tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a procrastinator. I'm a guy who always waits until the bitter end to get done what I need to get done. And when I was a kid growing up, I started, as Ed said, back in 1991. I had just turned 21, and I was broadcasting Cardinal baseball. And I had to wait until I was 21 because Anheuser-Busch was our big sponsor. And it's not really a good thing if you're 20 talking about how great it'd be to have a beer after the game during a Cardinal game. So I had to wait. And I realized at a young age that when the phone rang at the Buck House, and I was still living at home, and they wanted a speaker to come talk to a group, they wanted my dad, obviously, who was one of the best after-dinner speakers I've ever heard. So at that time, he was getting one call after another, and I started to do the speeches. And sooner or later, some more organizations were calling me, and I remember getting one call from a Kiwanis club to go speak. I don't know if there are any Kiwanis members in the group today. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know if that still exists. But this is back in 1991, and I go into this speech, and I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. No clue. And I wait, and I wait, and I wait. And as I'm walking into the arena where I'm going to talk, I look down, and on the handle of the door was the word push. And I thought, what a great topic for a speech. So during lunch, I sat there, and I went through, that push takes you to the top, push takes you to where you need to be. And I did the speech, and I pulled it off, and it went pretty well, and people actually paid attention, but I got too cute. And I said, so if you want to know what'll get you where you need to be in life, just turn around and look at the handle on the door. And they did, and it said pull. And I am living, breathing proof that pull will get you where you need to be in life. Growing up the son of a broadcaster, trailing him around during games, after games, being in a major league clubhouse allowed me to start in this business when I was 19. And from what I know about the car business, and I know a little bit, I know there are a lot of second, third, fourth generation guys and girls in this room who are now running dealerships that their dad or their grandpa once ran. And I would say it gives you a huge advantage, a big head start. It did for me. I broadcast when I was in college at Indiana University, and I went from Indiana to Louisville, and I broadcast for the Cardinals AAA club, and then I went back. And so I've been around professional athletes my entire life, from the Cardinals in the 70s to trailing around with my dad Monday Night Football when he would do those games with Hank Stram. And I've seen these guys, and I'll take one example. I'll take the example of Albert Pujols. If the question is, what does it take to be an All-Star, and what does it mean to be an All-Star? I think these days in Major League Baseball, unfortunately, and I'd be happy to talk about it with questions and go any direction you want, and I'll tell you anything you want to know about anything I know with regard to HGH or steroids or any of that. But I think if the question is, what does it take to be an All-Star, I hope the answer these days in Major League Baseball is go see a pharmacist. I hope the answer in baseball these days is not, well, you get the right concoction and you inject it, and then you stay ahead of the testing and you become the best in your field, and if they catch you one day, they catch you. I hope it's not getting to that point. I fear that for some portion of Major League Baseball, I don't know what the percentage is, that may be the case. But in the case of Albert Pujols, a guy who, if I don't know anything, and I may not know anything, if I'm probably as dumb as I think I am, then maybe I'm dead wrong about Albert Pujols. But I think the guy has done it the right way. I've seen the guy. I've seen his work ethic. I've seen that he came into the Cardinals spring training 6 springs ago, and nobody had ever heard of the guy. And he went through spring training, and he hit one hit after another. He hit about 400 that first spring, and he was only 20 or 21. And Tony La Russa, at the end of spring training, started to put him, and Tony has never done this in his life, started to put him in positions where he would fail intentionally. Because he was so scared of this kid. He was so scared of having to take this know-nothing 20, 21-year-old kid to the big league level. Played 1 year in minor league baseball. He didn't think he was ready. But for the spring, nobody could get him out. In the first couple of weeks, that's one thing. The second couple of weeks of spring training, it's another. And so by the end of spring training, Tony was putting him at shortstop. Tony was putting, you think about his body right now, he was putting him at first base, center field, left field. He made plays at shortstop you couldn't believe. And there was something different about this kid. And I remember watching him and learning about Albert Pujols, learning about the ability that he had on the field, and then learning about the guy that he is. At that time, before he had ever been to the major league level, he had fallen in love with a woman who had a child who had Down syndrome. This guy didn't have two nickels to rub together, and he decided that it would be the right thing to do to not only marry the girl, but to adopt the daughter with Down syndrome. And now if there's one thing closer to Albert Pujols' heart than baseball, it's the foundation that he's created for kids with Down syndrome. And he's been like that from day one. But I see the dedication, and I see the way he works, and I see the hours he puts in after they play. These guys play a game, they get out of the game, they answer the questions from the media, and then they go right to the weight room. And they lift weights all night. And that's a big difference from the way that the game of baseball used to be played. I mean, I worked with Tim McCarver. You saw the body of Tim McCarver. That's a bad body. And, you know, he's walking around, and his hands are all gnarled up. And we, you know, they have to put the microphone in his hand before the game, and they have to clutch it out of his grip from being beaten up from behind home plate. Played in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and into 1980. The only catcher ever to play in 4 decades. So, I mean, he's in one category. This guy's in another. And he'll tell you, we didn't used to do that. You know, we were more like car dealers. We'd do our thing and then go drink at night. So, for Albert, I've seen the kind of guy that Albert has been before he hit it. I've seen the kind of guy that Albert has been on his way up. And I've seen the kind of guy that Albert has been since he has become a 5-time All-Star and a batting champion and the current MVP. He is everything you hope for in a hero. And like my buddy Troy Aikman said about his financial advisor, and Jordan, you're not it, so just don't worry about it. He said, if this guy's stealing money from me, then I can't trust anybody for the rest of my life. Because I know that this guy's not stealing from me. I trust him. And I trust Albert Pujols is doing things the right way, but you don't know. And that's why when, you know, yesterday we're at a pre-All-Star Game event, and I've got Rick Leventhal from Fox News trailing me around waiting to do an interview. I know what he wants to talk to me about. He doesn't want to talk to me about, you know, aren't the Chevy baseballs floating in the Allegheny River fantastic? And isn't this going to be a great day? And what a celebration of the game. He wants to talk to me about HGH. He wants to talk to me about steroids. And it's something that we all have to deal with in this profession. And, you know, I was there front and center in 1998 when Mark McGwire broke the single-season home run record. I will swear to you that to this day, Tony La Russa does not believe that Mark McGwire ever took steroids. He doesn't. He honestly believes that. I don't know if he did or didn't. I don't know if Barry Bonds has or hasn't. Ken Caminiti was a young switch hitter who got into it, was into other stuff, he died a couple of years ago of an overdose, and said that there were as many as, I think he said 60% of Major League Baseball players were on steroids. If that's the case, it's a shame. But I would say this, if there's no known test for HGH, then it's not just a baseball problem. It gets pinned on baseball. It's a bigger deal than that. It's football, it's the Olympics, it's hockey, it's basketball, if there is no test. So for the next day, and what I chose to do yesterday, and what I'm going to do the rest of the season with Major League Baseball on Fox, is celebrate what's good in baseball. And this is such a great game, and it's still such a great game. And I think that the tide has turned in Major League Baseball, and people know what's going on. And I believe the commissioner's office is trying to do what it can against a strong players association to get rid of performance-enhancing drugs in sports. I hope so. They say they are. I believe they are. I've talked with Bud Selig. That to me is the big hurdle. But you can't tell me that this game is not hugely popular. It's by far the best all-star game of the four major sports, by a mile. Not even close. The Pro Bowl in the vaunted NFL is nothing compared to the Major League Baseball all-star game. And the same can be said for the NBA and the NHL. This is it. This is as good as an all-star game gets. And it's fun to stand there in the clubhouse and to watch, if you want to say Pujols walk into a clubhouse and be a teammate of David Wright, this young kid who was a stud last night during the home run hitting contest. Or in the American League, David Ortiz is now sharing a locker room with Alex Rodriguez and Derek Jeter. It's great. It's a great night. And this is a great sport. Record attendance. Our ratings on Fox Saturday Baseball have gone up or stayed even for the last 8 or 9 years, which is unheard of in today's television viewing marketplace. It just doesn't happen. And our game of the week on Saturdays has stayed steady, if not increased, since we started 10 years ago, which is unbelievable. And then during summertime viewing, it's not easy to get an audience, but people are watching. People are coming out to ballparks. People are enjoying this sport. People are enjoying the Detroit Tigers. Are there any Tiger fans out there? That, to me, is a story that we'll talk about probably of all the big picture items tonight during the game. The Detroit Tigers will be the topic of conversation. And I'm sure Tim told you yesterday when you guys talked with Tim, his quote about Jim Leyland and what Jim Leyland told his team and told the media he told his team about acting like you're in first place but preparing like you're in second place. It's just a change of mentality. And that's the same for the car business. It's the same for the beer business. It's the same for selling widgets. If you believe that you're good enough to be in first place, like the Tigers are, and they are good enough to be in first place with the kind of talent they have, but you also believe that you need to stay on top of it and keep preparing like you're chasing somebody, then you'll be okay. And Jim Leyland has changed the entire attitude and mentality of that team. That young pitching is phenomenal with the young arms that they've got. From Verlander, they're playing without Maroth, who's on the disabled list, and hopefully he'll come back before the end of the year. But my gosh, they got a lot of talent, and it's great. I think it's good for baseball. Have these other teams pop up, and this is a proud franchise, Detroit. Have them pop up and be strong again is fun, and it's great for the game. We at Fox are still waiting for the Chicago Cubs to figure it out. And whatever the next network is after this current 7-year deal, we'll be trying to figure out for the Cubs to figure it out. It's amazing what's happened when they were 5 outs away from the World Series in 2003 to think to where they are now. And they're right here, and they just cannot keep Pryor and Wood healthy. And if you don't have your top two guys, it's not going to happen. So I really look forward to this week. And I look forward to this game. It is the hardest game for any announcer to do. And I'm sure Tim told you that to make you feel sorry for him as he does his 15th All-Star game. It is the hardest, though, because there's very little strategy. And I'm sure you want to ask me about this time it counts and should the winner of the All-Star game determine who has the home field advantage in the World Series. Tim and I believe that it's done a lot of good things for this specific game. You can quarrel with whether it should lead to home field advantage in the World Series. But for this game alone, talking to the managers, if there's one way to slow these guys down, the starting lineup, who are the best players on each side, although you look at the bench on each side and the talent there is unbelievable, better than I've seen it in the 8 All-Star games I've done. But if you want to keep the starting lineup in there, tell the manager that the game counts. Remind the manager of what it was like when we were all sitting there in 2002 in Milwaukee, and Tim and I are looking at each other on the air, and you see Bob Brenly and Joe Torre go behind home plate. There's one pitcher left on each side that wasn't supposed to pitch. There's no bench players left. And I said, well, we're going to play one more inning, and if nobody scores a run, it's a tie. Isn't that great? This whole thing is going to result in a tie. And so this was one way to avoid it. It's made the managers think strategy within the game, try to save certain players for key matchups, which Socha did the first year they did it. Said, I'm going to keep Hank Blaylock for Gagne. And if Gagne comes in and Blaylock can come up with the game on the line, that's going to be my matchup. That happened, and Blaylock won the game with a home run off Gagne in the Chicago White Sox home park. And these managers are starting to get it. And if I'm Ozzie Guillen tonight, or I'm Phil Garner tonight, two teams that are right in the thick of it again, I'm going to manage like crazy to win the thing. Why not? I mean, those are the rules. If I have home field advantage of the World Series on the line tonight, I might as well try to win it. And it keeps these starters in the game longer so that they're not, one at bat, wave to the crowd, and then off they are to the private airport in their jet to go back to wherever they go. And that's a big deal, I think. I'd rather see the starters play and let the bench guys be bench guys, and if they get an at-bat, they get an at-bat. But let's play the game. Let's see who's best. And the American League, I think, will win tonight. To answer your question before somebody asks, they are loaded. They are loaded in the regular season and interleague play. They are loaded on this team for the All-Star game, and they'll be the favorite, whoever the team is in the American League in the World Series, because right now the talent is better on the American League side. I can't explain why. I don't know if it's tied into global warming. I don't know what it is. But for some reason, the American League is now better than the National League. That's just the way it is, and it'll swing back the other way. I don't know when, but when some of these kids like Reyes and Wright of the Mets and the Dodgers, the young Dodger players that have been fantastic, start to get some experience, then the National League will be back on top. But for now, if you're going to have a bet with your buddy, I'd take the American League tonight. I'd love to take questions just to kind of guide it to where you want me to guide it this morning. If anybody, I know they have some microphones in the crowd. In case we can't hear the question, who wants to be the first to fire it out at me today? Yes, sir.
Why is there seem to be renewed discussion about the DH? I've seen this in the last couple of weeks. I mean, is it National League saying that's why they're so much better than we are? Or just all this has been around for, 20 years now?
Yeah, no, you're right. And it's a good question and something that we may talk about tonight because of the American League dominance. When these National League teams in interleague play go into an American League park, well, they've got the American League team conceivably